You're awake, the thoughts won't stop, and you have two choices. You can lie there for the next 2 hours, chasing the same thoughts in circles, exhausting yourself further, waking up depleted and defeated. Or you can press play on something that will actually help. Every night you spend at war with your own mind costs you more than sleep. It costs you tomorrow's energy, tomorrow's clarity, tomorrow's capacity to show up for the life you're trying to build. Stop letting the spiral win. This audiobook has helped thousands of people reclaim their nights. Tonight is your turn. Like this, subscribe so these tools are always there when you need them, and share it. Someone you know is lying awake right now. Chapter 1: The Hour That Reveals Everything. 3 in the morning is not just a time on the clock, it is a mirror. When the world goes silent, when notifications stop buzzing, when there's no one left to impress, distract, or entertain you, something else steps forward. Your raw, unfiltered, and often relentless. At 3 a.m. your mind doesn't whisper, it interrogates. Why did you say that? Why didn't you do more? What if you fail? What if you never become who you said you would? This is the hour where excuses lose their power. There is no audience, no applause, no validation, just you and the truth you've been avoiding all day. Most people think the problem is that their thoughts won't stop, that their mind is broken, that something is wrong with them. But that's not the truth. The truth is far less comfortable, but far more powerful. Your thoughts are not the problem, your relationship with them is. Think about it like this. During the day your mind is like a crowded city, noise everywhere, conversations, distractions, movement. You can ignore almost anything because there's always something louder pulling your attention away. But at night, especially at 3 a.m., that city shuts down. The streets empty. The noise disappears. And suddenly even the smallest voice echoes like a scream. That voice was always there, you just couldn't hear it before. And now that you can, you don't know what to do with it. So you try to escape. You grab your phone, you scroll, you distract yourself with videos, messages, anything that can pull you out of your own head. For a moment it works. But the second you put the phone down, the thoughts come back stronger, louder, more aggressive. Because they're not trying to ruin you, they're trying to reach you. There's a story about a man who kept hearing a dripping sound in his house every night. It drove him crazy. He tried to ignore it, cover it up with music, even sleep with headphones, but the sound never stopped. Finally, one night he got up and followed it. It led him to a small lake in a pipe behind the wall. It wasn't loud during the day because everything else drowned it out. But at night it was impossible to ignore. That leak, if left unfixed, would have destroyed the entire house. Your 3 a.m. thoughts are that leak. They are not random. They are not meaningless. They are signals, messages from a part of you that sees what you're avoiding, what you're suppressing, what you're delaying. And here's the hard truth most people don't want to hear. If your thoughts won't stop, it's because your life hasn't aligned with what you know deep down you should be doing. That tension you feel, that restlessness, that anxiety, it's not coming from nowhere. It's coming from the gap between who you are and who you know you could be. During the day you can hide from that gap. You can stay busy. You can convince yourself you're making progress. But at 3 a.m. there's no hiding. That's why it feels so intense. But intensity is not your enemy. It's your opportunity. Because most people run from this moment. They numb it. They distract from it. They silence it. And in doing so they silence the very voice that could change their life. You're not here to silence your mind, you're here to understand it. Imagine sitting across from yourself at 3 a.m., no filters, no pretending, just a conversation with the version of you that sees everything clearly. What would it say? It might remind you of the goals you keep postponing, the habits you said you'd build but didn't, the risks you're too afraid to take, the conversations you're avoiding. The truth you keep burying under comfort and routine. And yes, that's uncomfortable, but discomfort is not a sign to stop, it's a sign to pay attention. There's a reason high performers, leaders, and people who truly evolve don't fear these moments. They use them. They treat 3 a.m. not as a problem but as a checkpoint, a moment of clarity in a world full of noise. Because clarity doesn't come from comfort, it comes from confrontation. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Let's get practical. Because understanding is only the first step. What you do with that understanding is what changes everything. The next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., don't reach for your phone immediately. Don't try to escape. Stay still for a moment. Let the thoughts come. Observe them not as threats but as information. What are they repeating? Patterns matter more than individual thoughts. If the same idea keeps showing up, it's not random. It's pointing to something unresolved. Maybe it's your career. Maybe you know you're settling. Maybe you're playing it safe when you should be taking a risk. Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe there's something you need to say, something you need to change, or even something you need to let go of. Maybe it's your discipline, the promises you make to yourself but don't keep, the small actions you avoid that slowly erode your confidence. Whatever it is, don't judge it, just notice it. Then ask yourself one simple question: what is this trying to tell me? Not what is wrong with me, not why am I like this, but what is this trying to tell me? That shift changes everything. Because now, instead of being a victim of your thoughts, you become a student of them. And once you understand the message, the next step is action. Not massive, overwhelming change. Just one small, clear step in the direction your mind is pointing. If your thoughts are about your health, maybe that step is committing to a simple morning routine. If it's about your career, maybe it's finally starting that project you've been delaying. If it's about a conversation, maybe it's deciding that tomorrow you will speak up. Small actions create momentum, and momentum quiets the mind, because when your mind sees that you're listening, that you're responding, it doesn't need to scream anymore, it trusts you. And trust between you and yourself is one of the most powerful forces you can build. Right now, your 3 a.m. thoughts might feel like chaos, but underneath that chaos is clarity, direction, truth. The question is not how do you stop the thoughts. The question is, are you willing to listen to them? Because once you do, once you stop running and start paying attention, something shifts. The same hour that used to feel like torture becomes a source of insight. The same thoughts that used to overwhelm you become guides, and that's when real change begins. So the next time you're awake at 3 a.m., instead of asking, how do I make this stop, ask yourself something different. What am I being shown right now? What am I avoiding that I need to face? What small step can I take tomorrow that aligns me with the life I say I want? And most importantly, if I keep ignoring this, where will I be a year from now? Chapter 2: Why Your Mind Won't Let You Rest. The last time you found yourself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., it didn't come out of nowhere. That restless energy, those looping thoughts, they were signals pointing towards something deeper. You began to see that your mind isn't attacking you, it's trying to communicate with you. And once you stop running from it, you start realizing that the noise has a pattern, and that pattern has a purpose. Now it's time to go deeper into why your mind refuses to stay quiet when everything else around you has. Your brain is built to protect you, not to comfort you. That's the first thing you need to understand. It's constantly scanning for threats, gaps, and unfinished business. During the day, it's overwhelmed with input, so it prioritizes immediate tasks. But at night, especially at 3 a.m., it shifts focus. It goes inward. It starts reviewing, analyzing, questioning. It's not malfunctioning, it's doing its job. The problem is most people have trained their minds to operate in a constant state of avoidance. You delay decisions, you suppress emotions, you ignore discomfort, you distract yourself with noise, content, conversations that don't require depth. And your brain keeps track of all of it. Nothing disappears, it just waits. At 3 a.m., when the distractions are gone, everything you've been postponing comes back to the surface, not because it wants to overwhelm you, but because it hasn't been resolved. Think of your mind like an open browser with too many tabs. Throughout the day, you keep opening new ones, tasks, conversations, goals, worries, but you rarely close any. You just minimize them and move on. By the time night comes, your system is overloaded, and at 3 a.m. your brain starts clicking through every open tab. That's why it feels chaotic. That's why it jumps from one thought to another. It's not random, it's unfinished. There's also something else happening that most people don't realize. Your identity is being challenged. During the day you play roles: professional, friend, leader, creator. You behave in ways that align with how you want to be seen. But at night those roles fade, and what's left is your raw identity, who you actually are, not who you present yourself to be. If there's a gap between those two, your mind will highlight it. If you say you're disciplined but you know you've been inconsistent, your mind will remind you. If you say you want success but you're avoiding the work required, your mind will confront you. If you say you value honesty but you're not being honest with yourself or others, your mind won't let that slide. This is where most people feel the most discomfort, not because the thoughts are loud, but because they're accurate, and accuracy is hard to sit with when it doesn't match your self-image. So what do? You don't fight it, you don't try to silence it. You learn how to respond to it in a way that builds alignment instead of resistance. Here's where the shift begins. Instead of seeing your thoughts as something you need to control, start seeing them as something you need to organize. Because chaos is just unstructured information. The first step is to externalize what's inside your head. Keeping everything in your mind is what creates the loop. When thoughts stay internal, they repeat. When they're expressed, they begin to settle. At 3 a.m., if your mind is racing, sit up and write. Not perfectly, not in a structured way, just get it out. Every thought, every worry, every idea. Don't filter it. You'll notice something almost immediately. The intensity drops. Because your brain no longer needs to hold everything at once. Now once it's out, you start sorting. What is actually actionable? What is just fear? What is something that requires a decision? What is something that requires acceptance? This is where clarity starts to replace chaos. Most of your thoughts will fall into one of three categories: things you can control, things you can influence, things you need to let go of. Your stress comes from treating all three the same. You try to control things you can't, you ignore things you can influence, and you hold onto things you should release. At 3 a.m. your job is not to solve everything, it's to correctly categorize what's in front of you. Once you do that, you create a simple plan. If it's something you can control, decide the next step, not 10 steps, just one. If it's something you can influence, identify how you'll approach it when the time comes. If it's something you need to let go of, acknowledge it directly, not by forcing yourself to forget, but by accepting that it exists without giving it power over your actions. This process trains your mind. It shows your brain that you're not ignoring the problem, you're engaging with it in a structured way. And when your brain sees structure, it reduces the urgency, because urgency comes from uncertainty. The more clear you are, the less your mind needs to push. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There's another layer to this that most people overlook. Your environment during the day is directly shaping your experience at night. What you consume, who you talk to, how you spend your time, it all feeds your mind. If your day is filled with scattered attention, shallow engagement, and constant stimulation, your night will reflect that. Your brain doesn't just process what happens, it processes how you process what happens. If you rush through your day without reflection, your mind will force reflection at night. If you avoid difficult decisions, your mind will revisit them when you're alone. If you constantly distract yourself, your mind will demand attention when there's nothing left to distract you. This is why discipline during the day creates peace at night, not because it makes your life perfect, but because it reduces the number of unresolved loops your mind needs to deal with. Simple habits create massive shifts. Taking 10 minutes in the evening to review your day, writing down what you accomplished, what needs attention tomorrow, and what you're letting go of, having clear priorities instead of vague intentions, following through on small commitments to yourself. These things seem basic, but they change how your mind operates. They reduce friction, they build trust. And when your mind trusts you, it doesn't need to keep you awake to remind you of everything you're not handling. But let's be honest, there will still be nights where your thoughts are loud, where your mind doesn't settle easily, where everything feels heavier than usual. That's not failure, that's part of the process, because growth is not a straight line, it's a series of adjustments. What matters is how you respond in those moments. Do you fall back into avoidance, or do you lean into awareness? Every time you choose awareness, you strengthen your ability to handle the next moment. You build resilience, and over time, what used to overwhelm you becomes manageable. What used to feel chaotic becomes clear. What used to keep you stuck starts pushing you forward. So when your mind refuses to let you rest, don't see it as an enemy. See it as a signal. A signal that something needs your attention. A signal that there's a gap you can close. A signal that there's an opportunity to align your actions with who you say you want to be. And that alignment is what creates real peace. Not the absence of thoughts, but the presence of clarity. So tonight, if you find yourself awake again, don't immediately try to escape it. Sit with it for a moment, write it down, sort it out, take one small step. And then ask yourself, not out of frustration but out of curiosity, what in my life is still unresolved? What am I avoiding that I know I need to face? And if I start addressing it even in small ways, how different would my nights begin to feel? Chapter 3: Breaking the Loop Before It Breaks You. You've started to see the pattern now. Those 3 a.m. thoughts aren't random attacks. They're signals tied to what's unresolved in your life. You've recognized that your mind isn't working against you. It's reacting to what you've been postponing, suppressing, or avoiding. And once you began organizing those thoughts instead of fighting them, something shifted. The chaos started to show structure. But here's where most people get stuck. They understand the pattern and still stay trapped in it. Because awareness without action doesn't break the loop, it just makes you more conscious of it. And there's nothing more frustrating than knowing exactly what's wrong yet continuing to experience it over and over again. That's what the 3 a.m. loop really is. A cycle of recognition without resolution. You think about the same problems, you feel the same tension, you promise yourself you'll change. But when morning comes, you fall back into the same habits, the same distractions, the same patterns that created the problem in the first place. And by the time night returns, nothing has changed. So your mind brings it back again, not because it doubts you, but because your actions haven't confirmed anything different. This is where discipline separates intention from transformation. Breaking the loop isn't about having better thoughts. It's about building better responses, because your thoughts will come, they always will. The question is whether you respond in a way that closes the loop or reinforces it. Let's get precise. A loop exists when something remains open, a decision not made, an action not taken, a truth not acknowledged. Your mind keeps returning to it because it's incomplete. So the solution is not to suppress the loop, the solution is to close it. But most people try to close everything at once. They look at their life, see multiple areas that feel off, and get overwhelmed. That overwhelm leads to inaction, and that inaction keeps the loop alive. So instead of trying to fix everything, you focus on one loop at a time. One, not 5, not 10. One, because clarity comes from focus, not from trying to handle everything at once. Think of it like this: if your room is messy, you don't clean the entire house at once. You start with one area, a desk, a corner, a single surface, and once that's clear, you move to the next. Momentum builds from completion. Your mind works the same way. Pick one recurring thought that shows up at 3 a.m., one issue that keeps repeating, and ask yourself a direct question: what action would move this forward? Not solve it completely, not make it perfect, just move it forward. If it's your health, maybe it's committing to a 20-minute workout tomorrow, not a full transformation, just one step. If it's your career, maybe it's sending one email, applying for one opportunity, or starting one task you've been avoiding. If it's a conversation, maybe it's deciding exactly what you're going to say and when you're going to say it. Clarity removes hesitation, and hesitation is what keeps loops open. But there's something even more important than taking action: following through, because your mind doesn't trust what you say, it trusts what you do. Every time you tell yourself you'll do something and don't follow through, you weaken that trust. And when trust is weak, your mind compensates by reminding you more often, more intensely. That's why the thoughts feel louder. It's not because the problem got bigger, it's because your mind is trying harder to get your attention. So when you decide on an action, keep it small enough that you can't avoid it. Make it so simple that there's no excuse, because consistency builds trust faster than intensity. And once trust starts building, something powerful happens. Your mind begins to quiet down, not because everything is perfect, but because it sees progress. It sees movement. It sees that you're no longer ignoring what matters. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it, share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There's another layer to breaking the loop that most people overlook: your identity. Right now, whether you realize it or not, you have an identity tied to your patterns. Maybe you see yourself as someone who overthinks, someone who struggles with consistency, someone who starts but doesn't finish. And as long as that identity stays intact, your behavior will keep aligning with it, because identity drives action. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your identity. So if you want to break the loop, you have to shift how you see yourself, not through affirmations or empty statements, but through evidence. Every small action you follow through on is a vote for a new identity. When you do what you said you would do, even in a small way, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you're capable of discipline. You prove that you can be consistent. You prove that you can close loops instead of leaving them open. And over time, those small proofs stack up. They reshape how you see yourself. And once your identity shifts, your behavior follows naturally. Because now you're not forcing yourself to act differently. You're acting in alignment with who you believe you are. But let's address something real. There will be resistance. There will be days where you don't feel like taking that small step, where your mind tries to convince you it doesn't matter, where you justify waiting, delaying, pushing it to tomorrow. That's not a sign to stop. That's the exact moment where change is happening, because resistance shows up right before growth. And how you respond in that moment determines everything. Do you listen to the excuse, or do you follow through anyway? Every time you follow through despite resistance, you weaken the old pattern. And every time you give in to resistance, you reinforce it. It's that simple, not easy, but simple. Breaking the 3 a.m. loop doesn't require a complete life overhaul. It requires consistent, intentional action in the areas your mind keeps pointing toward. It requires you to stop negotiating with yourself, to stop saying "I'll do it later," and start saying "I'll do it now," because later is where loops live, now is where they close. And once you start closing loops, even small ones, you'll notice a shift. Your thoughts won't feel as overwhelming. Your nights won't feel as heavy. Your mind won't need to repeat the same things over and over, because it knows you're handling them. That's what creates peace, not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of action. So the next time you find yourself awake at 3 a.m., don't just observe the pattern. Interrupt it. Choose one thing, decide one action, follow through the next day, and then repeat. Because transformation doesn't come from one big decision. It comes from small, repeated actions that close the loops your mind refuses to ignore. And as you begin to break those loops one by one, something changes. The same mind that once kept you awake starts to trust you enough to let you rest. So ask yourself, not just in that quiet hour, but in the middle of your day, what loop have I been leaving open? What is one action I've been avoiding that I know would move this forward? And if I commit to closing it, even in a small way, how quickly could I change the way my mind shows up when everything else goes quiet? Chapter 4: Rewire your NIGHTS by owning your days. You've seen what happens when thoughts are ignored, and you've felt the difference when you begin to act on them. The loop only exists because something stays open. And once you start closing those loops even in small ways, your mind begins to trust you again. That trust changes everything. But there's a deeper layer you haven't fully addressed yet. Your nights are not the problem. Your days are the blueprint. What shows up at 3 a.m. is not created in that moment. It's revealed. It's the result of how you've spent the previous 12 to 16 hours. Every decision, every distraction, every delay, every action you take or avoid, it builds momentum. And that momentum doesn't disappear when you go to bed. It follows you. Most people treat their nights like something separate from their days. They think if they can just find the right trick, the right routine, the right distraction, they'll finally sleep peacefully. But you can't fix a nighttime problem with a nighttime solution if the root cause lives in your daytime behavior. You don't drift into peaceful sleep, you earn it. That might sound harsh, but it's also freeing, because it means you're not stuck, you're not broken, you're not at the mercy of random thoughts. You have control over the inputs that shape your mind, and control starts with awareness. Take a step back and look at your day honestly, not how you wish it looked, but how it actually unfolds. How often are you fully present in what you're doing? How often are you distracted, jumping from one thing to another without finishing anything? How often do you avoid tasks that require effort and choose comfort instead? How often do you tell yourself you'll handle something later, knowing deep down that later rarely comes? These aren't small details. These are the building blocks of your mental state. Every time you leave something unfinished, you create an open loop. Every time you avoid a decision, you add weight to your mind. Every time you distract yourself instead of engaging deeply, you train your brain to crave stimulation over clarity. And when the stimulation disappears at night, your mind doesn't suddenly become calm, it becomes aware. That's why people who are busy all day often feel the most restless at night. Not because they did too much, but because they didn't do what mattered most. Busyness is not progress. Activity is not alignment. You can fill your entire day with movement and still feel unsettled when everything stops. Because what your mind is looking for is not motion, it's completion. So if you want to rewire your nights, you have to start by restructuring your days, not in a complicated way, not with an overwhelming system, just with a few disciplined shifts that create clarity and reduce friction. Start with intention. Before your day begins, decide what actually matters. Not a long list of everything you could do, but a clear focus on what you must do. 1 to 3 priorities, that's it. Because when everything feels important, nothing gets completed. And when nothing gets completed, your mind carries it all forward. Next, commit to finishing what you start, not perfectly, but completely enough that it doesn't stay open in your mind. If you begin a task, stay with it until you reach a natural stopping point. Don't jump between 5 different things. Don't leave everything half done. Completion creates mental closure, and closure creates calm. Then there's something most people overlook: your relationship with discomfort. During the day, you're constantly making choices between what's easy and what's necessary. And every time you choose easy over necessary, you create a quiet tension. You know you avoided something. You know you took the easier path. And even if you ignore it in the moment, your mind doesn't forget. At 3 a.m. it reminds you, not to punish you, but to push you. So start leaning into discomfort when it matters. Make the call you've been avoiding. Start the project you've been delaying. Have the conversation you've been putting off. Do the work that requires effort instead of choosing the distraction that feels good for a moment. Because every time you choose discomfort with purpose, you reduce the need for your mind to bring it up later. You handle it in real time, and that changes the entire dynamic. There's also the way you close your day. Most people don't close their day, they drift out of it. They go from activity to distraction to exhaustion without ever creating a clear end point. So their mind keeps running, because from its perspective nothing is finished. You need a shutdown ritual, not something complicated. Just a consistent way to signal to your brain that the day is complete. Take 10 minutes. Review what you did. Acknowledge what you completed. Identify what needs attention tomorrow. And most importantly, decide what you're letting go of for now. This simple act creates separation. It tells your mind that everything has a place, a time, and a plan. And when your mind sees that it doesn't need to keep everything active, it can rest. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There's another piece that ties all of this together. Consistency, not perfection. Consistency. You don't need to have the perfect day every day. That's unrealistic. Life will interrupt you. Plans will change. Some days will feel off. What matters is that you return to these principles consistently, that you keep setting clear priorities, that you keep closing loops, that you keep choosing what matters over what's easy, that you keep creating intentional endings to your day, because consistency builds rhythm, and rhythm stabilizes your mind. When your brain knows what to expect, when it sees patterns of completion and follow through, it stops operating in a state of urgency. It stops needing to remind you of everything all at once. It trusts the system you've built, and that trust carries into your nights. But let's be clear about something. This is not about eliminating every 3 a.m. thought. That's not the goal. The goal is to change your relationship with those moments, to move from feeling overwhelmed to feeling aware, from feeling attacked to feeling informed, from feeling stuck to feeling in control. Because when your days are aligned, your nights become quieter. Not silent, but manageable, not chaotic, but clear. And in that clarity you gain something most people never develop: self-trust. The kind of trust that comes from knowing that when something needs your attention, you'll handle it, not eventually, not someday, but directly and intentionally. And that changes how you experience everything. So as you move through your next day, don't wait until 3 a.m. to reflect. Pay attention now. Where are you leaving things open? And where are you choosing distraction over action? Where are you avoiding what you know needs to be done? And what would happen if you started addressing those things before the night has a chance to expose them? Because the truth is simple. Your nights don't need to be fixed. They need to be earned. And the way you earn them is through how you show up when the sun is still out. So ask yourself as you go through your day with intention instead of autopilot. What am I doing right now that my future self will thank me for tonight? What am I avoiding that I know will come back to me when everything gets quiet? And if I start owning my days with discipline and clarity, how much peace could I create when the world slows down and it's just me and my thoughts again? Chapter 5: Control the mind before it controls you. By now you've seen the connection clearly. Your nights are shaped by your days, and the thoughts that keep you awake are not random. They're reminders of what's unresolved. You've started closing loops, taking action, creating structure where there was once chaos, and as you do that, something begins to shift. The noise doesn't disappear completely, but it becomes more manageable, more predictable, more within your reach. But there's still one challenge left. Even when you're doing the work, even when you're improving, there will be moments when your mind tries to take control again. Moments where thoughts spiral faster than you can process them, where one concern turns into 10, where your mind jumps from the present to the past to the future in seconds, where everything feels urgent even when it's not. This is where most people lose their footing, not because they don't know what to do, but because they lose control of their attention, and attention is everything. Your mind can generate thousands of thoughts, but only the ones you focus on gain power. The rest pass through, unnoticed, harmless, but when you lock onto a thought, when you give it your full attention, you amplify it. You turn a spark into a fire. At 3 a.m. this becomes even more intense. There are no distractions, no interruptions, nothing to pull your attention away. So when a thought appears, it feels bigger than it actually is, and if you're not careful, you get pulled into it. You start analyzing it, questioning it, expanding it, until it feels overwhelming. That's not because the thought is strong, it's because your focus is locked onto it. So the key is not to eliminate thoughts, it's to control where your attention goes. Think of your attention like a flashlight in a dark room. Wherever you point it, that's what you see, that's what feels real, that's what takes up space in your mind. If you keep pointing it at the same worry, the same fear, the same unresolved issue, it will grow in your perception. But if you learn to redirect that light, you change your experience. This is a skill, and like any skill, it requires practice. The first step is awareness. When a thought appears, don't immediately engage with it. Don't dive into it, just notice it, label it. Is this a real problem that requires action? Or is this a repetitive pattern that I've already acknowledged? That simple distinction creates distance, because once you recognize a thought as a pattern, it loses some of its authority. It's no longer a new problem, it's an old loop trying to replay, and once you see it that way, you don't need to give it the same level of attention. The second step is redirection, not distraction, but intentional redirection. Distraction is avoiding the thought. Redirection is choosing where your attention goes next. This could be something as simple as focusing on your breathing, slowing it down, paying attention to the rhythm, giving your mind something steady to hold on to. It could be visualizing the next step you're going to take tomorrow, not the entire plan, just the immediate action that moves you forward. It could be repeating a simple grounded statement that brings you back to the present. The goal is not to fight the thought, the goal is to stop feeding it, because thoughts need attention to survive. Without it they fade. But here's where most people make a mistake. They expect this to work instantly. They try it once, the thought comes back, and they assume it doesn't work. That's not how it works. Your mind has been trained for years to operate in a certain way. It won't change overnight, but every time you notice a thought and choose not to engage with it, you weaken the pattern. Every time you redirect your attention, you strengthen your control, and over time that control becomes automatic. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway, and subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. There's another layer to this, your emotional response. Thoughts don't just stay in your mind, they trigger emotions, and those emotions make the thoughts feel more real, more urgent, more important. So when a thought creates anxiety, your instinct is to react to that anxiety, to fix it, to resolve it, to get rid of it. But reacting emotionally often pulls you deeper into the loop, because now you're not just dealing with the thought, you're dealing with the reaction to the thought. So instead of reacting, you learn to allow the thought to exist without immediately responding to it. Allow the feeling to be there without trying to eliminate it. This doesn't mean you accept the thought as truth. It means you accept its presence without giving it control. There's a difference. When you stop resisting, you reduce the intensity, because resistance creates friction, and friction amplifies everything. But when you allow something to exist without fighting it, it loses momentum, it passes, and that's what most thoughts do, they pass, unless you hold onto them. Another practical shift is how you define control. Most people think control means stopping thoughts, but real control is choosing your response. You can't stop your mind from generating thoughts, but you can decide which ones you engage with. You can decide how long you stay with them. You can decide what you do next. That's where your power is, not in the absence of thoughts, but in your relationship with them. And once you understand that, everything changes, because now instead of feeling like your mind is controlling you, you start to feel like you're guiding it, not perfectly, but intentionally. And that intention builds confidence. Confidence that you can handle whatever shows up. A confidence that even if your mind gets loud, you won't get lost in it. Confidence that you can bring yourself back again and again. That's what creates mental strength, not silence, but stability. So the next time you're lying awake and your mind starts to spiral, don't panic. Don't assume something is wrong. Recognize what's happening. Notice the thought, label it, redirect your attention. Allow the feeling to exist without reacting, and repeat. Because control is not a one-time decision, it's a repeated action, a skill you build over time, and as you build it, something shifts. The same thoughts that once felt overwhelming start to feel manageable. The same moments that once felt out of control start to feel steady. And the same mind that once kept you awake starts to work with you instead of against you. So ask yourself in that quiet moment when everything feels amplified, where is my attention right now? Is it helping me, or is it pulling me deeper into something I've already seen before? And if I start choosing where my focus goes instead of letting it drift, how much control could I take back from the thoughts that once felt impossible to escape? Chapter 6: The Quiet Mind You Earn. You've walked through the pattern step by step. You've seen how your 3 a.m. thoughts are not random, but reflections of what's unresolved. You've learned how to close loops, take control of your attention, and align your days so your nights don't feel like a battlefield. And somewhere along the way, something shifted. You stopped seeing your mind as the problem and started recognizing it as a guide. Now it's time to bring it all together, because the goal was never to silence your mind completely. The goal was to build a mind that no longer needs to scream to be heard. A quiet mind is not something you find, it's something you earn. You earn it through the way you live when no one is watching, through the decisions you make when it's easier not to, through the promises you keep to yourself when there's no immediate reward. Most people want peace without discipline. They want clarity without action. They want rest without resolution. But that's not how it works. Peace is a byproduct of alignment. When your actions match your intentions, when your behavior matches your standards, when your days reflect what you say matters. Your mind has nothing left to chase you with. It doesn't need to remind you. It doesn't need to repeat itself, because you're already listening. Think about who you become when you consistently follow through, when you stop delaying what needs to be done, when you stop negotiating with your own standards, when you stop choosing comfort over growth. You become someone your mind can trust, and trust changes everything. Because when your mind trusts you, it relaxes, not completely, not permanently, but enough to give you space. Space to think clearly, space to rest deeply, space to exist without constant tension. That's what you've been building, not just better nights, but a stronger relationship with yourself. But let's be honest about something. There will still be nights when your mind gets loud. There will still be moments when old patterns try to return. There will still be times when you feel that familiar pull, that urge to overthink, to spiral, to lose control. That doesn't mean you've failed. It means you're human. The difference now is that you know what to do. You don't panic, you don't run, you don't give those thoughts more power than they deserve. You recognize them, you understand them, and you respond with intention. You close what needs to be closed. You redirect your attention. You allow what you can't control. You act on what you can. And then you move forward. That's the cycle, not perfection, but progress, not silence, but stability. And over time, that stability becomes your baseline. Where 3 a.m. used to feel overwhelming, it now feels manageable. Where your thoughts used to control you, you now guide them. Where your nights used to drain you, they now teach you, because you've stopped resisting the process and started using it. If this audiobook is bringing you value so far, take a moment to like it. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. Leave a comment with your biggest takeaway. And subscribe to Prime Audiobooks for more content like this. Now let's continue. Here's the truth most people never accept. Your life is not shaped by your intentions, it's shaped by your patterns. What you do daily becomes who you are. What you avoid daily becomes what controls you. What you face daily becomes what frees you. So if you want a quiet mind, you don't chase it at night. You build it during the day. You build it by finishing what you start, by making decisions instead of delaying them, by leaning into discomfort instead of avoiding it, by choosing clarity over distraction, by creating structure where there was once chaos. These are not big dramatic changes, they are small consistent actions, but those actions compound, they build momentum, they build trust. They build a version of you that doesn't need reminders at 3 a.m. because nothing important is being ignored. And that's when something powerful happens. Your mind shifts from being reactive to being supportive. Instead of pointing out everything that's wrong, it starts reinforcing what's right. Instead of keeping you awake, it allows you to rest. Instead of feeling like an opponent, it becomes an ally. That's the transformation, not in your thoughts, but in your relationship with them. So as you move forward from this moment, don't wait for the next sleepless night to apply what you've learned. Start now. In the middle of your day, in the middle of your routine, in the small decisions that seem insignificant but define everything. Because those are the moments that shape your nights, and your nights are where the truth shows up. the truth about what you've been avoiding, the truth about what you've been building, the truth about who you're becoming. So the question is not whether your thoughts will come. They will. The question is whether you'll be ready for them, whether you'll meet them with awareness instead of resistance, whether you'll respond with action instead of avoidance, whether you'll use them as guidance instead of seeing them as obstacles. Because when you do, everything changes. The same mind that once felt like a burden becomes a source of clarity. The same silence that once felt uncomfortable becomes a place of strength. The same 3 a.m. that once felt endless becomes just another moment you can handle. And that's what this has always been about. Not escaping your thoughts, but mastering your response to them. So tonight, when the world slows down and the noise fades and it's just you and your mind again, don't ask why this is happening. Ask something better. What have I done today that allows me to rest without regret? What have I faced instead of avoided? What have I finished instead of leaving open? And if there's something still unresolved, something still calling for your attention, something still showing up in that quiet hour, will you keep pushing it away? Or will you finally step forward and handle it? Because the quiet mind you've been chasing isn't waiting for you in the dark. It's waiting for you in the way you choose to live when the light is still on.